Welcome to Dialogue. Today's topic is part of an extensive series we're doing on the modern dating crisis. And, when you listen to conversations about how hard it is to find a real connection these days, the narrative, it often centers on the frustrations voiced by women.
Mm-hmm. And for a good reason.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The ghosting, the commitment phobia, the emotional unavailability, it seems to be everywhere.
Right. And those are absolutely vital parts of the conversation.
They are. But to really get the full picture of this crisis, I think we have to look at, well, the entire picture.
Mm-hmm.
And that means we need to shift the focus for a bit and really sincerely look at the concerns men are raising about their experiences.
Yeah.
Because for a long time, it feels like the male perspective, the anxiety, the frustration, it's been kept in private conversations.
There's a real fear of judgment there,
Yeah.
of being told you're just complaining.
Exactly. So this deep dive is about pulling those unacknowledged feelings out into the open. We're looking at what our sources say is an experience defined by a kind of mutual exploitation.
That's the perfect way to put it. And the first thing to get out on the table is this. Men are asking, where are the good women? Just as often and just as sincerely as women are asking about men.
It's the same question.
It's the exact same question, just echoing from the other side. The difference, like you said, is the volume. Men are much quieter about it.
And that silence isn't because they don't feel it.
No, not at all. It's a defense mechanism against that social backlash. So our mission here is to get past that silence and unpack the specific things men are lamenting. And when you put them all together, you see this really stark picture.
A picture of what, exactly?
Of mutual exploitation, of deep misunderstandings about what a partner is supposed to be, and this overwhelming feeling of being commodified, of being undervalued.
Okay, so let's unpack that. It seems like the right place to start is with that core emotional experience. The feeling men report of being disposable, unappreciated, and quickly replaced. This isn't just, a bad mood. It sounds like it's the foundational anxiety.
It is absolutely foundational. It's the bedrock of so much of the skepticism and withdrawal we're seeing.
And how does that actually manifest?
Well, in really practical ways. It
Yeah.
gets summed up in this feeling of being chosen last.
Or only when it's convenient.
Exactly. Chosen only when convenient. And you have to think about the psychological damage that does over time.
Right.
When you feel like a placeholder, you're just filling a gap. Maybe it's an emotional gap. Maybe you're just a +1 for an event because her first choice wasn't available.
So your value is completely conditional.
Completely. Your character, your humor, your loyalty, all the things that make you you, they become secondary to the temporary job you're doing. And that is so damaging to a person's self-worth.
Because you're constantly bracing for the moment your contract expires.
That's a great way to put it. You're just waiting for your replacement to walk in the door because your value is never about who you are, but what you provide in that specific moment.
Which is the exact opposite of feeling wanted for who you are.
The exact opposite.
And if that's the core anxiety, how does the real world reinforce it? Because the sources are really clear on this. Men feel they're being boiled down to two primary metrics.
Right. Resources or looks.
It sounds like a brutal filtering system.
It is a brutally binary system. The whole environment becomes transactional. And those two things are the gatekeepers. First, there's physical attractiveness, the looks, which that's the first filter, especially on the apps.
If you don't pass that visual test, the conversation might not even start.
It often doesn't. But let's say a man gets past that first gate. He immediately runs into the second, and often much more demanding one, resources.
His income, basically.
His income, or at least the lifestyle that his income suggests he can provide, that's a huge point of frustration.
Can you walk us through what that judgment actually looks like? Because it sounds ruthless.
It is. It's incredibly effective at sorting men into two piles, viable providers and everyone else.
Yep.
A guy might be putting in real time and energy, feeling like he's building a genuine connection. And then the conversation turns. It pivots to questions about his career, his 5-year plan, where he lives, what kind of travel he does.
Oh, lifestyle question.
The lifestyle questions, and if the reality of his financial situation doesn't match her predetermined lifestyle goal, maybe he's a teacher or he's being smart and paying off debt instead of going on lavish vacations, he's just dismissed.
So he wasn't being evaluated on his compatibility.
Yeah.
He was being evaluated on his solvency.
Precisely. And the emotional gut punch there is realizing you weren't being seen as a potential partner, but as a potential status accessory, a financial vehicle.
Whose main job is to fund a certain quality of life.
Exactly. So many of the accounts we looked at were from men who felt completely overlooked or just dropped the second their earning potential was revealed to be below some unspoken target. It just confirms that deepest fear that who you are inside doesn't matter as much as what's in your bank account.
Which brings us to what might be the most powerful idea in this whole analysis. This concept of parallel exploitation. It really forces you to stop pointing fingers because it suggests that both men and women feel used in different ways.
This is, I think, the most important takeaway for understanding just how deep the crisis goes.
So, just as women feel, men are using them for casual sex.
Men feel women are using them for emotional support, for resources, or just for attention. It's a perfect and tragic parallel.
It suggests we've all sort of adopted this utility mindset.
We have. Both sides are coming to the table thinking, what can I get from this person? Instead of what can we build together?
One person is looking to fill a need for physical intimacy. The other is looking to fill a need for financial security or validation.
Right. And it's not about saying the grievances are equal. That's not the point. The point is to recognize the shared mechanism.
The shared transactional mechanism.
Exactly. It's an extraction process. And when you're trying to extract something from another person, whether it's sex or money, the other person is always going to end up feeling used.
The woman feels objectified. The man feels like a walking wallet.
And you get this vicious cycle. Transactional behavior on one side just breeds more cynicism and transactional behavior on the other. It's a downward spiral.
Okay, so let's dig a bit more into that economic dimension. A huge concern we saw is that dating is being viewed as a way to upgrade one's quality of life. Not about finding a partner, but about finding lifestyle access.
Yes, and lifestyle access is a term we have to define carefully. It's not just about a guy who can pay his bills.
It's more than that.
It's much more than that. It's the expectation that the man's resources will fundamentally upgrade the woman's entire life. It means access to a certain tier of restaurants, luxury travel, maybe even better social circles.
So it's not about sharing a life, it's about him providing access to a better life.
Precisely. The man feels like he's being sought out as a kind of financial escalator, not a co-pilot for a journey you build together.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure, a man might spend a lot of time, energy, and money planning some incredible birthday trip for his partner, but then he notices she's more focused on getting the perfect Instagram photos of the resort than she is on, connecting with him.
The experience becomes content.
The experience becomes content. The relationship itself becomes about performance, and he's the producer and financial director. It sets this impossibly exhausting standard.
And this feeds into that specific complaint of men being sought as financial upgrades. What's the psychological cost of feeling like your value is constantly being measured that way?
Oh, it's enormous. It creates this pervasive anxiety, this constant need to perform financially.
You're always auditioning.
Always. When a man feels his value is tied almost exclusively to his earning potential, it just erodes his self-worth everywhere else. He starts to fear that if he loses his job or his career stalls, the entire relationship will just collapse.
Because the foundation wasn't love, it was his balance sheet.
Right. He becomes a service provider. And his contract is always up for renewal based on his performance. It's absolutely exhausting, and it's why so many men feel they aren't loved for who they are.
And it's not just about money, is it? The sources list other resources men feel are being extracted: emotional support and attention.
Yes, and let's focus on attention for a second because it's so relevant in our digital age.
Okay.
Financial resources are tangible, right? But attention is this invisible resource that takes a huge amount of mental and emotional energy to provide. And men are feeling that their attention is just being consumed.
Consumed for what?
To provide constant, steady validation for their partner. To be a validation engine.
What does it actually look like day to day?
It means he feels responsible for liking every social media post, for engaging in these long text chains that are all about her day, for constantly reassuring her about her looks or her job. His primary function becomes boosting her ego.
And it's a one-way street.
That's the key. It's often one-directional. Instead of a partnership where support is mutual, he feels like his energy is just being drained to feed her digital or emotional needs. It's another way he feels used for his output, but this time the output is his attention.
This constant outpouring of resources, money, emotion, time, it leads directly to another core complaint: entitlement. without reciprocity.
That's the real sharp edge of it, because it's not just about giving, it's about giving and getting nothing back.
So the man feels he's the one initiating all the dates, paying for everything, doing all the emotional heavy lifting.
Exactly. And he gets minimal effort in return. There's no interest in his emotional state, no one planning dates around his interests, no one asking about his anxieties.
And when that flow is so unbalanced, what's the end result?
The end result is he feels profoundly unappreciated and undervalued. It solidifies that idea of being disposable. Because if your time, your money, your energy aren't valued, then you aren't valued. Only what you provide is.
And that leads to burnout.
That's the fast track to burnout. The man withdraws, he gets cynical, or he just leaves the dating scene entirely, which of course just makes the crisis worse for everyone.
Let's shift a bit now to the bigger cultural picture.
Sure.
Because it's not just about individual interactions. There's a major concern that our hypersexual culture is actively decreasing loyalty.
That's a great way to frame it. The culture itself is acting as a destabilizing force.
How so?
Well, when you have dating apps and social media creating this perception of endless options, it just normalizes the idea of having countless alternatives available instantly.
The paradox of choice.
Exactly. Why would you invest the hard work to resolve a conflict with one person when the culture is screaming at you that a newer, shinier, less complicated option is just a swipe away?
It erodes the foundation of trust.
It completely erodes it. Loyalty stops being an assumed part of a relationship and becomes this scarce commodity that has to be constantly renegotiated.
Right.
It makes any kind of long-term planning feel incredibly risky.
And this ties right into a very charged topic, the idea of high body counts causing trust issues.
A very charged topic.
But if we look past the moral judgment, what's the actual concern being voiced by men here?
The nuance is critical. For most of the men raising this, it's not about judging someone's past. It's about what that past implies for the future stability of the relationship.
So it's a pragmatic concern, not a moral one.
It's deeply pragmatic. If a potential partner has a long history of frequent, short-term, casual relationships, a man starts to worry. He worries that this pattern shows a preference for novelty, or maybe a low tolerance for the hard work that commitment requires.
Which feeds directly back into that core fear of being replaced.
Precisely. He starts asking himself, is this commitment real, or am I just the next person in a long line? It's a direct clash between modern sexual freedom, which is progressive in so many ways, and the very human need for security and exclusivity in partnership.
And that fear of replacement is reinforced by another cultural trend men are complaining about, the normalization of rosters.
Yes, the roster. The idea of keeping a list of multiple potential partners that you're engaging with at the same time.
It's probably the most direct way to make someone feel disposable.
It is. By definition, if you're on someone's roster, you are a backup. You are an option, not a priority. The relationship is inherently conditional and low investment from the start.
And how does a man experience being on a roster? What does that feel like?
It feels like emotional whiplash. It's that feeling of only getting attention when someone else's preferred date cancels. You might be the guy she calls for emotional support, but another guy is the one she takes to fancy events, and a third is for something else entirely.
You're given a specific, limited role.
Your role is specialized, and you know that if you don't perform that role perfectly, there's someone else on the list ready to take your place. It creates this culture of constant, low-stakes auditions where no one ever feels secure enough to be vulnerable and truly invest.
Okay, this brings us to a really nuanced area. The friction around relational energy and roles. Men are lamenting both a lack of traditional femininity and at the same time what they call masculine relational energy.
Right, and on the surface that sounds contradictory, but it points to a very real confusion about roles and partnership dynamics today.
So what's behind the lack of traditional femininity complaint?
I think when men voice this, they're not talking about aesthetics or 1950s gender roles. They're talking about a certain kind of complementary energy. They feel they're missing qualities like nurturing, emotional receptiveness, or someone who prioritizes creating a harmonious shared life.
An emotional stabilizer for the partnership.
In a way, yes. And then at the same time, they complain about this masculine relational energy. Now, this isn't about a woman being strong or successful. Men value that.
So what does it mean?
In this context, it refers to an energy that's overly assertive, controlling, or competitive within the relationship itself. It feels like the woman is trying to lead in a way that doesn't leave any room for him to step into his own preferred role, perhaps as a provider or protector.
So if both people are trying to lead, no one is following. The dynamic becomes a power struggle.
That's it, exactly. The man feels he's constantly being challenged or managed, not partnered with. He can't nurture because he feels there's no receptivity, and he can't lead because he feels there's no room for him to do so. It's just friction.
And this is all complicated by digital culture. The sources point to digital vanity and attention-seeking as a huge problem.
A huge invisible barrier to connection because it forces the relationship's focus outward instead of inward. We're talking about the constant need for validation on social media,
Right.
where getting likes and comments from an external audience becomes more important than the actual real-life connection with your partner.
Give us a real-world example of that. How does that show up on a date?
Okay, the classic example. A man plans a really nice, expensive dinner, but his partner spends the first 10 minutes not talking to him, but trying to get the perfect photo of her meal for Instagram.
Hmm.
The whole point of the shared experience shifts. It's not about connection anymore. It's about content creation. He realizes he's basically funding the production of her social media feed.
He's not a partner, he's a prop.
Or a producer. And this ties directly back to what we said earlier about feeling used for attention. His role is to feed her digital ego. The relationship starts to feel less like an intimate partnership and more like a performance for an audience.
So as we bring all these threads together, the picture of the male experience that emerges is incredibly consistent. Men are feeling disposable, unappreciated, and used for their resources.
Yes. The single overarching theme is the commodification of the male partner. Men feel like they're being selected based on external metrics, their job, their looks, their bank account, and not on their internal character.
They're being evaluated like products, not people.
Exactly. And products can always be upgraded. So if your value is just your output, whether that's money or attention, that value is incredibly fragile.
Because there's always someone richer or better looking.
Always. So the moment your output drops or a better option appears on the roster, you expect to be replaced. And that commodification is what drives so much of the anxiety and withdrawal we're seeing.
Which brings us back to the most painful conclusion of this whole analysis, the shared human cost. This is a story of mutual suffering.
It really is. Both genders feel deeply exploited, undervalued, and completely misunderstood.
And the irony is just staggering.
It's an immense, painful irony. In a world with more tools for connection than ever before, apps, social media, the actual result is maximum alienation for both sides.
Women feel their bodies are being exploited for casual sex.
And men feel their wallets and their energy are being exploited for lifestyle upgrades and validation.
It's systemic breakdown. Everyone is looking for connection, but they're trapped in this transactional framework.
And the cycle just feeds itself. Women feel used, so they adopt defensive, resource-focused strategies. Men feel used for resources, so they become transactional or just give up on offering real emotional investment.
It's a crisis defined by mutual pain.
Exactly. That shared pain, that reciprocal transactional behavior is the modern dating crisis. Both sides are hurting, and they're operating out of a fear that just drives them further and further apart.
And that leaves us with a final provocative question for you, the listener, to think about. If both sides feel they're being exploited, if both are retreating into these transactional interactions designed purely for utility, whether it's resources or attention or sex, what core, deep-seated fear is driving people away from vulnerability and genuine connection? What are we all so afraid of that we'd rather feel used than risk investing openly and honestly in a real partnership?
It suggests the exploitation isn't the goal. It's a defense mechanism against something deeper. A fear of rejection, maybe, or a fear of failure that feels too risky to face.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please like, subscribe, and share this video. Also, let us know in the comments what really stood out to you in this conversation, and if there's any related topic or new topic that you would like covered in a future video.